Good morning, everyone. Carmela Novi, your divorce architect, coming to you from my morning commute. I want to talk to you today about the 5 pieces of information that you need to know if you want your attorney to help you work out whether you can keep the house in your divorce. Okay, so those 5 items are price of the house or value, market value of the house. The second thing is how much do you owe against the house, meaning the mortgage balance or payoff amount. The third thing is the interest rate on your mortgage. The fourth thing is whether you can assume the mortgage with the lender, whether the lender will allow you to do an assumption of the mortgage to remove your spouse's name at the conclusion of the divorce. And 5 is what does the rental market look like in your area if that's where you want to stay after the divorce, for a similarly situated or similarly sized residence, right? So you may have a couple of children, you may be living in a 3-bedroom house, you may believe that you need a 3-bedroom apartment after the divorce if the house gets sold, and I'll explain why you need to know these things. So first, market value of the house. You can do that by getting an appraisal, which usually in New Jersey, for example, somewhere it runs you about $750. If you don't want to spend that money and for now you just preliminarily want to get a comparable market analysis from a realtor, that's fine, because it at least give you a decent idea of what your house would sell for. The second thing is pull out a mortgage statement. How much do you owe? So for example, if when you bought the house, you bought it for $500,000 and put 20% down, you have $400,000 in equity probably when you bought it. Depending on how aggressively you've paid down that mortgage, you may owe substantially less. It may depend on how long you've lived in the house, how many years you've had to pay down that mortgage. That's critical because the market value minus the outstanding liens is the equity value, right? And that's going to be a really important number for your attorney to understand. The interest rate, really important. I have a lot of clients nowadays who bought their homes when the interest rates were somewhere 2.9, 3%, really low, much lower than it is now. And that may be a persuasion point for the other side. If you explain to them that, look, if you refinance the mortgage, then the mortgage payments are going to be substantially higher. And if the other spouse wants to try to help find a way to keep the children, if you have children in the house, that's going to be a persuasion point, because that's going to be a huge determining factor in how much the mortgage payments will be, how large they will be after the refinance or assumption, and whether you can afford to stay in the house. The fourth thing, whether the lender will allow you to do an assumption. That's basically like, do you have enough income to take on the mortgage payment entirely? Not every lender allows you to do that, but I've been surprised nowadays. Some lenders will allow people to do that. You got to be credit worthy. Hopefully you have a really strong credit score. In order to do that, you may have to take on another guarantor to make the lender comfortable with that, meaning someone else will help you guarantee the mortgage once you remove the other spouse and their income for purposes of figuring out whether you can afford it, and the rental market. So again, it's a persuasion point. If your mortgage is $2,800 a month, and if you sold the house, a comparable apartment would cost you $4,000 a month, you may be able to help use that as a persuasion point with your spouse and their attorney that at least temporarily, if not for the long term, you either want to stay in the house or do a buyout of the other person's interest, because it works out to be cheaper anyway, especially if you can complete an assumption. So those are the 5 pieces of information you need to start with. That's not the entire analysis. There are other factors that go into whether you'd be able to buy out your spouse's interest or keep the house or stay in the house, whether for the long term or at least for the next year or two, if you're trying to keep the children in their school district, in their home schools, things of that nature. So those are your 5 things. And that's it for today. That's your tip for the day. Have a great day. Bye.